An ideal marriage, what this strange relationship teaches us about real love. At 63, after 2 divorces and 1 long, quiet companionship that felt more like roommates than lovers, I started asking myself a question I used to think only younger. Men asked, what does a truly good marriage even look like? Not just a functional one, not just one that avoids divorce, but one that still feels alive. 10, 20, 30 years in. I've spent most of my life as a therapist, a father, a husband, and lately, just a man who's seen a lot of love stories fall apart quietly behind closed doors. And honestly, most marriages I've known don't thrive. They survive. They hang on. But that spark, that warmth, it fades, and people settle. But there's this strange image that keeps coming back to me, something I never expected. A couple that shouldn't make sense. They're not marriage experts. Not influencers, not even real, they're fictional, and yet they might be the most real example of lasting love I've seen. Their names, Gomez and Morticia Addams. The way they love each other. It broke every rule I thought I understood about relationships. I know what you might be thinking right now. Seriously, Gomez and Morticia? The spooky couple with the gothic mansion and the pet piranhas? Yes, them, and I get it. It sounds absurd, but the older I get, the more I realize. Sometimes the people who look the strangest are living out the kind of love the rest of us gave up on. Gomez doesn't just love Morticia, he adores her. It's not subtle, it's not passive. The man worships her, and here's the thing, she doesn't roll her eyes or push him away. She welcomes it. She receives it. She leans into his wild passion, his open affection, his unwavering loyalty, and together it works. Not because it follows the rules, but because it breaks them, in the best way possible. Now, I used to believe what many men do, that for a relationship to last, the woman needs to admire the man a little more, that the man should lead and the woman should look up to him. And maybe, in many cases, that works, but not all love is built from the same blueprint, because love isn't about maintaining a structure, it's about finding your fit. Most of us shape ourselves to fit into the idea of what a marriage should be. But Gomez and Morticia, they shaped their marriage to fit who they actually are. They didn't suppress their personalities for peace. They didn't compromise their essence for compatibility. They built a relationship not around expectations, but around authenticity. And that's why it works. But what truly moved me was how they didn't just accept each other's oddness. They celebrated it out loud, without shame. Here's what struck me most about Gomez and Morticia, not just as characters, but as a model of something most people overlook. They're both strange, unapologetically, wholeheartedly, beautifully strange, and instead of dialing it down, they dial it up, together. Gomez isn't trying to win approval from the world outside. He's not watering himself down to appear more normal or successful. Morticia doesn't soften her edges. She doesn't try to blend in with the crowd. They don't just accept each other's quirks, they love them. And that right there, that's rare. Let's be honest, how many relationships do we see, especially after 50, where one person is always subtly trying to change the other? Why do you talk like that in public? Do you have to wear that old leather jacket again? Could you just not be so emotional all the time? It starts small. It sounds like concern, but it becomes quiet erosion, a slow sanding down of someone's essence until they barely recognize themselves. That kind of subtle shame. It doesn't build love. It builds distance. But then you have couples like Gomez and Morticia, 2 people who look each other in the eye and say, "You're weird and I love that about you." Not despite the weirdness. Because of it, they make no apologies. And when the world around them laughs or misunderstands or calls them crazy, they don't defend themselves. They just turn the music up and dance a little closer. Because when you find someone who doesn't just tolerate your truth, but celebrates it, that's not just love, that's freedom. And maybe the secret to their lasting spark wasn't just love. It was play. Unfiltered, unapologetic play, one of the quietest, most unnoticed deaths in any long-term relationship, is when the play disappears. It doesn't happen overnight. There's no big argument, no slammed door. It just slips away, quietly. One errand at a time, one silent dinner at a time, until everything becomes about bills, appointments, fixing the sink, calling the kids. And suddenly the laughter is gone, the teasing is gone, the spark is gone. But Gomez and Morticia, they never stopped playing. They flirt like teenagers. They tease like best friends. They dance like no one's watching, even when everyone is. They play games not to keep score, but to stay close, not to win against each other, but to win with each other. And that is rare, especially for couples who've been together for decades. See, we're told that play is for kids, that once you reach a certain age, life is supposed to become serious. But I've come to believe the opposite is true. Play is how grown-ups say, I still choose you, you still excite me, let's keep discovering. Now I want you to picture something. You're in your late 60s, the house is quiet. The kids are grown, the job's behind you, retirement is here, and the only game left is silence. No laughter in the hallway, no late-night silliness, no just because kisses. That's the reality for many men I've sat across from, men who provided, who stayed loyal, who did everything right, but somehow ended up in a house full of silence. It doesn't have to be that way. Play can return, not through pretending to be young again, but by being fully present, fully curious, fully alive. That's what Gomez reminds us. That's what Morticia lives out every day. They didn't stop playing because they got older. They kept playing, and that's why their love stayed young. So what does their marriage really mean? To me, it's not about romance or roles. It's about alignment, deep, soulful alignment. Let's zoom out for a moment, because this isn't just a quirky couple in a black and white sitcom. Gomez and Morticia aren't a punchline. They're a mirror. They reflect something that most of us were never taught. That marriage doesn't have to look like anything we've been told. Not a matching wardrobe, not a white picket fence, not a calendar full of joint events and carefully filtered smiles. Marriage, at its core, isn't about how it looks. It's about how it feels. And that feeling isn't always butterflies or passion or even harmony. That feeling is alignment. It's knowing that your weird matches hers, that your silence doesn't make her uncomfortable, that her fire doesn't put out. Your peace. It's walking into the room after a long day, saying nothing and still feeling understood. It's arguing without fear. It's being vulnerable without shrinking. It's loving without having to explain why. Most marriages don't fail because love disappeared. They fail because people try to force themselves into someone else's idea of love. They follow a script, one they never wrote but were handed, and every day they edit themselves to stay inside the lines. But scripts wear out, and people get tired of acting. That's why Gomez and Morticia matter, because they didn't follow the script. They wrote their own vows with their own language. They didn't try to be perfect, they just tried to be honest, and that honesty, flawed, theatrical, full of tango and madness, worked, because when someone looks at you and says, that part of you, the one you think is too strange or too much, I want more of that. That's not just love, that's a yes to your entire being. That's someone who sees what the world told you to hide and chooses it, so no. You don't need a perfect partner. You need a partner who aligns with your truth, who says, yes, that's you, I'm in. And maybe you're watching this, wondering if love like that still exists. So let me speak directly to you. If there's a quiet voice inside you that's ever whispered, maybe love just isn't for me anymore, I want you to know something. You're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. Maybe life's weathered you. Maybe you've grown comfortable in your routines. Or maybe the past left you carrying wounds that feel too complicated to explain. Maybe you've been told you're too serious, too quiet, too intense, too much. But the truth? You're not too much. You just haven't been met with the kind of eyes that see all of you and stay. And if you're already in a relationship, ask yourself gently, do we still play? Do we still laugh? Not at the world, but at our own weirdness. Do we still celebrate the strange, beautiful corners of who we are? If the answer is no, that's not failure. It's simply a sign that something deeper is calling for attention. And it's not about walking away. It's about showing up. Fully. Honestly, maybe for the first time in years. Sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is to stop hiding, to say this is me, still learning, still open, and to invite the person beside you or the one still out there to meet you there. And if no one comes to mind right now, maybe that person is still on their way, or maybe, just maybe, it starts with you. Would you be willing to meet yourself without judgment, to show up for your own heart the way you've shown up for everyone else all these years? Leave a comment below. Tell me one part of yourself you've hidden for too long. Let's start bringing it back together. If you know someone who's ever felt like they didn't quite fit, tag them. Share this. Start a conversation. Because love after 50 isn't just possible, it's needed. And when it's real, it doesn't just survive. It makes you feel alive again. Because the truth is, after 50, we don't need the illusion anymore. We need something raw, something real. After 50, we don't need the storybook ending. We've lived enough chapters to know. Fairy tales are often just well-written illusions. What we need now is truth, but not the kind of truth that's cold or sharp. We need the kind that holds us gently, the kind that looks at our scars and says, you're still worthy of being loved, just like this. And sometimes that truth looks nothing like what we imagined. It doesn't come in the form of candlelit dinners or perfect anniversaries. It doesn't come wrapped in perfection or performance. Sometimes truth shows up in a mismatched pair, in someone who laughs at your worst jokes, who notices the twitch in your smile when you're pretending you're okay, who lets you be silent without asking why. Truth might wear black and tango in the living room. It might be odd, unconventional, messy, but it's yours. And when you finally stop chasing what should be, you create space for what could be. So here's to the kind of love that doesn't check boxes, that doesn't ask you to change first, that simply says, you, just as you are. I'm here. Because after all these years, maybe that's what real love was supposed to be all along. Not loud, not flawless, just two people choosing each other again and again, even after the storms, even after the silence. So if you're still breathing, you're still loving, and if you're still loving, you're still becoming.